Double-sided tape. This simple material could help you immensely when it comes to panel lines. Welcome to Cut, Transform Glue. For the dagger, I wanted a simple color scheme, mostly black with a pink accent color. So I started with black spray paint for most pieces and white for the ones I plan to go with pink, using nail polish by the way. This kind of paint can be hard on the body, so thanks to my patrons, I've been able to invest on a proper mask and build myself a simple paint booth. And let me tell you, the technique of using white matte spray paint as a bright base for the pink nail polish works really well. I got a nice saturated coat pretty quickly, it dried super fast, and the best of all, there was no clogging on my airbrush. Pretty quickly, I got all the accent pieces painted. Now, going over the black pieces with a brighter shade of gray also worked surprisingly well, which I didn't really expect. If I were using my regular chip acrylics, that would have taken me at least a couple of hours. All that to say that this combo of nail polish over a spray paint base has become my favorite way to finish models. I can work so much faster now. So now let's talk about the double-sided tape panel line technique, and let me show you how simple and yet how powerful it really is. Also, along with the tape, you're just gonna need a thin plastic sheet or even like a thick piece of paper, nothing too crazy. You're gonna go ahead and prepare some strips of plastic or paper with double-sided tape on one side. Also, to make things easier for you in the future, go ahead and make a bunch in different sizes. The idea is pretty simple. You use this as a temporary roller, guiding your cutting tools along the edge of the plastic without damaging your model's surface, while still keeping everything securely in place with the help of the double-sided tape. And by the way, to make these light cuts, I'm using some cuticle tools, but an X-Acto knife would work just as well. Unlike when using a regular roller, you can make these in whatever size you need, so you can fit them into tight spots if needed. I also love that these are cheap and disposable. Need a specific angle? Just cut it to the shape you need. It's just plastic and tape at the end of the day. Or save it for later and simply replace the tape on the back. In this particular project on the dagger, I'm using the technique to add some extra shallow panel lines alongside the deeper, more visible ones. Keep in mind that these won't catch as much paint during the wash process as the real panel lines, let's say, but they'll definitely add to the visual storytelling of the model. Also, when you scratch the surface, you'll end up exposing the layer underneath it. In my case, it's the primer layer, which is intentional since the model is black. So keep that in mind when you're working on your builds. And of course, have fun with it. Run some tests, explore the potential of every material. That's always the focus here on the channel. A second technique you can try with the help of double-sided tape and a more complex tool like a 3D printer is creating detailed stencils for airbrushing. This project is called the Dagger, so of course I wanted to include that image somewhere in the model. So I quickly modeled and printed a simple dagger shape, then used double-sided tape to attach it to the pink leg, just because I thought it would look fun. The trick here is to go slow. Use plenty of airflow and as little paint flow as possible. That's important to keep the paint from bleeding under the printed mask. Some might suggest using a clear coat first to seal the edges, but I don't think that would work with something as thin as nail polish. And if you ask me, the result turned out pretty good. On a different note, now that I'm using nail polish as my main type of paint, I can finally go back to doing oil washes. And let me tell ya, I've forgotten how much better they look on models. I'm still a bit of a noob when it comes to oil washes or the painting process in general, to be honest. I just get by as best as I can. But let me know in the comments if you like a deep dive on any of these topics. I'll be happy to share what I've learned over the years. Okay, so let's switch gears for a bit and talk about the base for this project, which I decided to build using this big plastic disc. I started by removing some unwanted features and imperfections, like the lip on the bottom and some plastic flashings. Then I grabbed a round over bit for my Dremel, mounted everything onto this jig I built, and rounded off the corners from the bottom. In my collection of round shapes, I found this green one that fit perfectly on the black plastic disc. It's rare for things to fit together this nicely, so I had to use it. And to lift the base slightly off the ground, I glued the same shape to the other side. Then I found this plastic disc from a VHS tape. It had some cool surface details and radial patterns, so I decided to attach it on top of everything. I just had to find the center of the green piece and drill a large hole to make room for it first. There was a weird hole in the middle of the VHS piece, so after some sanding, I covered it by attaching a 3D printed Grizzly from my collection. And speaking of 3D printing, the diameter of the black disc was too small for the robot size, so I had to make it bigger. On my Bambulab A1, I printed 8 segments that combined form a ring to extend the base diameter. I attached this using CA glue, and now that I'm thinking about it, I probably could have printed the ring in just 2 or 3 segments. Also, as you can see, I kinda overshoot it, and the whole thing ended up slightly bigger than I needed it to be. But bigger is actually fixable, and much easier than if it were smaller, which would have been a real problem. I just had to use some 0.3mm plastic sheet to make the inner diameter a bit tighter. Once I had a snug fit, I used more CE glue to keep everything together, and of course, I also used a ton of baking soda. I also want to include a human figure in this diorama, so I had to cover the big gaps in the middle of the base, but I wanted to keep them slightly visible. I made some grills by combining 3D printed parts and a metal mesh. And that pretty much wraps up the base build, which I'll be painting in the next episode. Now allow me to take a quick detour, because this week I wanted to introduce you to a new segment called the Weekly Grizzly Hunt. Of Of course, I'm always on the lookout for new parts for my projects, you guys already know that, so I'm making an effort to bring something new every week. And today, I bring you a couple of external disc readers. Taking the case apart was easy, just a few thumb screws on the top and bottom, and the 2mm aluminum plates will be very useful later. This isn't my first disc reader, so I know exactly what to expect from it, so for now I'll focus on the case and see what it's got for me. The sides of the case had some LED lights, and to protect them there was this mesh piece here. Not sure it works with the scale of my models, but I'll save it for now. Now the LEDs themselves were busted, probably just too old, but each one had this translucent bar with it, to create that lighting effect. I had some LEDs around the shop, so I decided to give it a try. And with the lights off, the effect is actually pretty interesting, definitely saving these. Now let's finally get to the disc reader, where most of the cool parts really are. Like I said, it's not my first, actually not even my 10th disc reader, so I knew how to open it pretty quickly. And I also knew where some cool pieces were hiding. And here's the core of the unit, where I find the good parts that I save for that final detail pass that take my models to the next level. Right here we have the reader itself, with cool lenses, metal parts, and of course the stepper motor, which I always love to find. But I also wanted to show you the IDE flat cables, which hide some highly detailed plastic pieces. Of course I got two units, two external disc readers, but today I only went through one, and here's what I'm saving for my collection. What do you think? Was it worth it? Let me know in the comments. And that pretty much wraps up this video. Next time we meet in the Dagger series, it'll be in the full build compilation video. I'm pretty excited for that. I build things, test ideas, and follow strange creative paths, all independently. Sharing that process is part of the fun, but it takes time, tools, and support. If you're into it and you want to help me keep going, check out my Patreon page, the link is below. And of course, as always, thanks for watching.